guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm very happy that you are here in my second episode about Belle Gunness, the killer. So in the previous video we actually looked into Belle's life story, how she came to the United States, how she got married, how she moved to Lamphere, and how strange things started to happen there. And then there was this fire where her house in Lamphere burned down. She also allegedly burned together with her children. And now, let's get into the most creepier things about this story. So, the people started to inspect the place where the house was burned down. They splashed some water to make sure that the fire is definitely calmed down. And all signs allegedly showed that this fire wasn't like an accident, but it was a man-made fire. The rumors spread it like, I don't know, like a comet, like a meteorite. And there were two groups of people. One said that Belle must have done that by herself, like a suicide type, and the others were pointing out to Lamphere because before her death, Belle was walking around the city and telling everybody that she's afraid to lose her life, to lose her house, because Lamphere said that he's going to burn down her house. And again, just a side note, I'm sitting actually outside the house, and if there are some noises, I do apologize for that. Again, somebody is mowing the lawn. Lamphere was like the primary suspect of this crazy fire. And the weirdest thing is that he wasn't actually hiding anywhere. They found him in some usual working place, and they caught him and brought him to the police. Meanwhile, the inspection of the debris of the burnt house started, and shocking discoveries were made. So, as I mentioned, they found a body of a burnt lady hovering over the bodies of 3 children. It looked like the lady was trying to protect her children, and it looked really sad and very devastating. And of course, all the newspapers made Belle as a hero mother because she was trying to protect her children in the fire, but it wasn't like that, and we will get to that a little bit further. And of course, in this scenario, Lamphere was made like this terrible monster who burned down the house together with a mother with 3 children. Lamphere was put in a prison and charged with murder and arson. But as I mentioned in the first video, and you might remember that if you watched it carefully, there was something strange about the lady's body. She didn't have a head. So this raises a question. Why? I mean, did somebody cut it off? If did, why? Maybe it was like an attempt to hide the identity of the woman, but why again? Or maybe the head simply just burned down into ashes, and I do not think that it is actually possible, because if the head burned down, the body must have changed into ashes too. How do you think? The autopsy showed that the head was actually removed before the body was burned. So yeah, where does this get us? So what happened next? People got very curious about this strange case and the Lamphere farm, and many people were investigating the debris of the farm and the house, and even Andrew Helgelien's brother came, and he also got involved into the investigation because he was in search of his brother, and he thought maybe there will be some clues that could point out where his brother actually is. The 3 neighbors and Maxon, the farm helper, remember the first ones who got to the place when the house started to burn, together with Helgeland's brother, started to inspect the debris of the burnt house. And of course, they didn't find anything because so many people had already been there and investigated that place. And then Helgelien asked to Maxon, the farm's helper, maybe there was like something specific that Belle did before she died that could be of importance and maybe give some kind of sign about what actually happened or maybe where his brother is. And actually Maxon do recall that Belle was asking him to make pits in the farm's territory, supposedly to get rid of trash, like from fish or I don't know, some vegetables. I guess at that time they just buried all the trash in the ground and then covered with land just so that it kind of rottens there. So it didn't seem very strange, but the strange thing is that Maxon didn't actually recall seeing that Belle was actually putting trash in these pits, and he also wasn't like involved in the process of filling in these pits or covering them with ground. This clue actually revealed a lot of things. So Andrew's brother, Helgeland's brother, asked Maxon to show like the latest pit that Belle was asking him to make, and so they went to that place and started to just simply dig, open it and see what's in. So they started to dig, they felt this smell, and well, yeah, if it's trash there must be some kind of smell, but something gruesome, something really terrible revealed to their sight. Some slashy and grotesque remains of human body was what they saw there. So they took out the remains of the body, and although they were in some terrible condition, Helgeland's brother recognized that one of these bodies is his brother Andrew. Of course, they called the police and investigators, and the investigators asked Maxon, the farm helper, whether he recalls where are the other pits that Belle asked him to make in the territory. And so he pointed out to all of the other pits, and they started to dig them out too. And in all of these trash pits, they found enormous number of bones, limbs. Some were older, some were just like recently buried and still in the process of rotting. So the flesh was decomposing. It was really gruesome. By the end of the day, the coroner concluded that they have dug out the bodies of two men, one woman and one a teenage female. And it was believed that this teenage female could have been Jenny. Remember the daughter who went away to the college in California, and she did it quite abruptly without saying goodbye, so it was quite weird. The international papers took over the story and covered it like in all of the newspapers, and now Belle was portrayed not as a savior of her children, but as a murderer, as a killer who killed not only her children but many other people. So now the story about Lamphere being guilty did not make any sense anymore, and the investigators asked Lamphere if he had known about all of these killings Belle was doing in her farm. Lamphere actually tried to convince the investigators that it was definitely not a suicide, and all of this was planned by Belle, and that she had escaped, and the proof of it is the fact that the body of the woman does not have head. And according to Lamphere, this was done so that the female cannot be identified but assumed to be Belle. Smart. So he said that Belle got a little bit scared after she received a letter from Helgeland's brother who said that he's coming, and so she wanted to stage all of this because she felt that Helgeland's brother will definitely understand what is happening and she will go to jail, of course.
In some sources, I also read that the day before the fire, both Belle's kids came to the school with swollen cheeks, and it can be seen that they have been crying. When teacher asked what had happened, girls told that their mother Belle had been beating them in the morning. To the question why, they replied that they have been playing in the basement, that is the forbidden area in the house. So maybe Belle was hiding something there related to the murders, maybe girls saw something they weren't supposed to see.
And he was still insisting that he and Belle were actually lovers, and all of this were planned like by both of them, and afterwards they were supposed to escape together. How romantic! So the plan was as follows. So they stole a similarly built woman's body from a cemetery, and then they just kind of took the head off. I don't know how, maybe they just cut it off. And this lady was staged as Belle, and I don't know, like, how do they do that, but the fact is that they got some kind of female body. According to Lamphere, the head was dropped into swamp, so nobody could afterwards find it. And in some sources I also read that they didn't rob a cemetery, but they actually killed some lady from the neighborhood. But I'm not sure, you know, these historical old cases, it's quite hard to find reliable sources and reliable information. It's like allegedly so much. So they also killed kids and they staged this fire, and afterwards Lamphere was supposed to meet Belle in some neutral territory, and they both would just escape. Again, how romantic. But the thing is that Lamphere said that Belle ditched him and she escaped without him. So now he looks like the only guilty one in this, or only the only guilty one who can be still caught. But controversy continues because allegedly there was a second confession of Lamphere, and the story goes as follows.
The story goes that Lamphere later contacted Reverend Edwin Shell, to whom he verbally confessed to being actually guilty in killing Belle and burning the house. Allegedly, the Reverend wrote down the confession and asked Lamphere to sign it, which he did. This Reverend put this confession in his safe and did not show it to anyone.
And then one journalist kind of somehow sniffed this fact that there is the second confession that belongs to this reverend, and he tried to contact this reverend and asked him to give the information that is provided in that confession, but the reverend didn't agree to do that. So the journalist did a very smart thing. He just wrote about the existence of the second confession in a newspaper, and this is where the reverend got scared because, you know, people could come after him and he's hiding the evidence, and so he gave this confession to the journalist and it was published. And I will quote: "In the confession, Lamphere said that he had killed Mrs. Gunness and children with an axe, sprinkled the bodies with kerosene and set fire to them and the house. His task usually being the burying of the bodies in the garden. The essential fact, however, was that the murderess was not alive." So basically, it looks like in that second confession, if it's like real one, Lamphere said that he was burying all the bodies that Belle was killing, and he killed Belle and the children and burned the house down. The body of woman that was found afterwards is Belle, and that she's dead.
But it appears that there was one man who had escaped Belle's bloody plan. He came forward and he told about that Chicago Tribune newspaper. His name was George Anderson. He describes that one night he woke up in Belle's guest room and she stood over him and stared into his eyes and held a lit candle in her hand. I quote, "The expression on her face was so horrible and murderous. Then she ran out of the room without saying anything." He said that he was sure that Belle would kill him and that he therefore put on his trousers and ran from the fire without looking back. I also read in some sources that it was after Anderson's escape that Belle decided to add strychnine to the murder plan so that she can make sure nobody escapes and her killings can be executed.
And meanwhile, the investigation of the farm continued, and now there were already 9 bodies found already in the line with dozen bones and shoes and belongings and many other things that witnessed that there have been even more people, and later the number grew up to 14. But there were so many pieces of bodies, like bones and stuff, that could not be put together as a whole skeleton, so we cannot definitely say how many bodies were there. But it was now clear that Belle had it all planned, so she started correspondence with all of these mostly Scandinavian descent men living in the United States. She told them stories about how great it would be if they would be coming and investing, and it would be so wonderful, and the farm is such a great place where to invest and where they can start a new life together. And when these men came, she just took the money and made them disappear, making a place for the next one. The fact that she was actually poisoning all of these men was approved by the coroner, who investigated Helgelien's body, and in his stomach he found some signs of strychnine. The investigation of remains showed that after the poisoning she hit the head with something and dragged the body to the cellar, and this is where she cut the body in pieces and then just buried them. The inconsistency of Lamphere's confessions, especially about the fact that Belle is actually out there, still alive, made the lives of people quite stressful, because they felt like she could be anywhere and she's endangering our lives. Actually, so many people, up to nowadays, amateur investigators and journalists, are trying to understand whether it actually happened, whether she actually got away with all of these murders. If she did, then it was a great chance for her just to start her life from zero again. But the investigators did not want to rely on the allegations that Belle might be alive, because remember, they put into jail Ray Lamphere, and he was the killer they wanted to be a killer, and they needed to justify it somehow, to prove it. But it seemed that the investigators were determined to keep Lamphere as the main guilty person. Why, you might ask? Well, the thing is that the dentist said that Belle actually had some fake teeth in her mouth, and assuming that her head was burned down to ashes, then these porcelain teeth might have survived and still could be found somewhere around in the ashes of the house. And surprise, surprise, somehow, after repeatedly investigating the place, they found a piece of a jawbone with some fake teeth still attached to this jawbone. The dentist kinda said, yes, that belongs to Belle, and this was kinda a big revelation that Belle is dead and Lamphere is guilty for killing her and her children and burning down the house. Guys, at this point I feel like something smells like suspicion here. It's don't come after me, but that's just my theory. They really wanted to make this Lamphere guy to look guilty, and this is why they just on the spot decided to do that dentist thing. And so many people were investigating the debris of the site where the house was burned, and nobody found that jawbone. And on that moment, when they decided to look for some fake teeth there, they just simply found a jawbone with the teeth. It's suspicious in my opinion, and I believe that investigators really wanted to close the case, and they had all of these bodies. They needed somebody to blame, and that someone, I guess, was Lamphere, because if Belle is dead, then she has already been punished for killing all these men, and those poor kids and the woman are dead, and the guilty one is Lamphere, and the circle is closed and case is closed. And they actually weren't taking any risks by saying that the case is closed, because in case Belle had escaped, she most probably was laying low and will not come back and show herself and say, yes, I'm alive, it was me, I'm guilty. The coroners of the case said that after the examination of the burnt body, they concluded that actually the lady's body was smaller than that of Belle's body, and that it was around 4 to 5 pounds lighter. So this might not be Belle actually. No official conclusions from the coroner regarding the head were provided. So this means that there were no official versions about what actually happened to the head. I guess it was officially assumed that the head burnt into ashes, which is so... I apologize, it's stupid. Anyways, despite all of these inconsistencies and questions, Belle Gunness was pronounced officially dead. And yeah, it really looks like the investigators were rushing things and trying just to close everything so that it is finished. And of course, Lamphere was put into jail as guilty, and he died there several years after he was put into that jail. But at the end, as I said, people got very obsessed with the fact that Belle might have escaped the punishment, and they were looking around, searching, maybe just like Belle Gunness in disguise. And here's one of the ladies that was considered being Belle, and her name was Esther Carlson. This lady was living in Los Angeles, and for a long time she was suspected to be actually Belle Gunness in disguise. And even if she wasn't Belle Gunness in disguise, she most probably was a killer anyways. So in 1930s, and this is the time when Belle supposedly ran away from LaPorte, Esther allegedly killed an older man in order to collect his insurance money afterwards. So the pattern is more or less very familiar and similar to Belle's.
Esther Carlson's first husband, Charles Hansen, died 9 months after they married. Authorities believed he had been poisoned by Esther. The investigation showed that another man who lived in Esther's house also died suddenly after he, according to her, took his own life with arsenic. So actually she was a shady lady. Not sure if it's true, but I read somewhere that in her belongings police discovered photos of Belle's children. Again, this is not confirmed. Maybe Esther's paths crossed somehow with Belle, or maybe she was just simply inspired by the story of Belle. Esther died in prison from tuberculosis, denying until her death that she is Belle.
I will not dive into Esther Carlson's case very deeply because it's also quite messy, but the fact is that at one point they posted a photo of her in the newspaper, and people put her picture together with Belle's picture, and they saw quite many similarities, and this made people quite confident that that's Belle in disguise. However, this Esther herself declined that she is Belle. Of course, what else would she could do, because she don't want some extra murders on her neck. But yeah, that's the fact. People actually believe that this Esther is Belle. I got quite intrigued and tried to understand if this could be actually possible, so I found this YouTuber who actually went to research this question, if Esther is actually Belle. And he actually did a really thorough work. So his main goal was to track back all the Esther Carlson life timeline in order to understand if this could be compatible with Belle's life timeline. So he dug out different official documents, like her marriage certificates, birth certificates if I'm not mistaken, and many other official documents from archives. And these documents proved that Esther Carlson could not be Belle. So if you are interested to look into that research more specifically, I will put the link to that video below. It's really interesting to follow his investigation process and see all the documents, because he's actually showing all the documents like from the archives, and it's a really good job that he did. But the weirdest thing about Belle Gunness and all of this gruesome case is that people actually got very obsessed with it. I mean, they were so interested. It was like they wanted to look into the Belle Gunness's legacy, if I can say like that, and kind of feel the vibe of Laporte Farm and look at it with their own eyes. So after that, like, many people came to Laporte Farm and wanted to investigate it just like a simple sightseeing object, which is so creepy. The hotels of Laporte were fully booked. Some special trains and vehicles were organized for people just to commute to that place. They held picnics like right there on this place where people had been buried earlier. They sold some snacks and drinks there, so it was like a huge entertainment, like just going on a cinema.
For a while, all the body parts, bones and whatever was left from the killed people, in line with different belongings that were dug out from the pits, were put out in somewhat morgue, so people from many places who had someone lost mysteriously could come and see all of this, because maybe the answers were there in Laporte Farm. Maybe there will be some clues among the belongings that show that their missing person was there. But also, there were some who just came for curiosity to look at all of these things by themselves.
And then the crime place actually became a part of Laporte Museum, holding Belle Gunness exhibition. And you can actually go there, visit the place and see it by yourself. And to conclude, I just want to say it's like certainly a very exciting case that hasn't been solved. But as a tale of folklore, it sounds very like intriguing and interesting, but the basis of it is that so many people were killed, and it was such a terrible serial killer who simply was doing that for money. And I cannot just find an explanation for her, even though I know that she came from like a poor background, and that's not an excuse. People, if you want some money, work for it, stay motivated, stay positive. But this scenario is completely off, completely. So all in all, I hope you enjoyed this mysterious story of a serial killer from Norway called Belle Gunness. I hope you will appreciate me with your likes, your comments. Write me down if you have heard about this story before. What do you think, if she actually escaped, or did she die and Lamphere was the guilty one? It will be very interesting to read your opinions about that. And also just reminding that I still continue to make videos about different things happening in my life here in Norway, like traveling around, sightseeing. Also, I'm still posting videos about interesting facts about Norway, about celebrities that you didn't know were coming from Norway, many other stuff, so make sure you have subscribed. That being said, stay safe and see you next time!